been sold a lie that doing more automatically means making more. But here's the thing. Productivity that doesn't actually connect to your business goals is just busy work. And I say this as a lover of all things productivity, organization, systems, automation. You name it, I love it. But ultimately, I would be doing my clients a complete disservice if I was constantly advocating for productivity that didn't lead towards anything on the bottom line. That's why I think it's so important that we have a conversation about how to actually build systems that translate to real business goals. We're not out here adding technology to lose our competitive advantage, are we? And if we haven't met, I'm Samantha. I'm an operations consultant and the founder of Exhale Operations, which supports small business owners who want to streamline their operations so that they can get back to the work they love. Before we dive in, if you enjoy anything about this video, regardless of whether you're interested in operations support or not, the best thing that you can do as a little thanks for putting in the effort is hitting like and subscribe down below. With that caveat out of the way, let's head into the content. Adding automation and AI to your business sounds really smart until you've used technology to eliminate everything that made you distinctive and valuable to your clients. While I am a total systems organizations nerd, I don't believe in systems for systems' sake, just to add more things to our to-do list, because that would make me crazy. And that's why it is one of the things that I spend all my nerdy time thinking about. What is it that makes a system successful beyond just the fact that it gets you from point A to point B? And this brings me to a couple of big picture observations I have made about the systems that work versus the systems that don't, that I think we need to understand before I get you into the nitty gritty how of building these systems. And the first piece I already touched on a little bit. It's that productivity does not equal profitability. Doing more things won't automatically make you more money. And getting more done only matters if it's tied to actual business drivers. There are many of us who have done what I would call productive procrastination. And this is one of the things as a productivity organizations nerd, I am so unbelievably guilty of, because I can convince myself up, down, and sideways that building a new automation to streamline XYZ system is exactly the thing that I need to be working on, when actually there are far more important things in terms of increasing visibility for my business, signing on new clients that should be getting more of my attention, but I'm avoiding them because they're uncomfortable and I don't want to do them. So getting very clear when you're thinking about building systems, one of the most important things you can do is not build a system to optimize for productivity, but to build a system to make the most important things in your business easy and the least important things in your business take the least amount of time. Even better if you can automate them completely so they are off your plate. It is our job as business owners whose responsibility is thinking at the larger level of the success of our business, not just to treat ourselves like the grunt workers at the bottom of the food chain. If we think that way, then of course we're just going to optimize for executing the most tasks possible, because that proves our value as a useful little worker bee. At the CEO level, we have to be asking bigger questions. What is the most valuable form of productivity? What tasks do we need to complete the most efficiently because they matter the most for what makes the difference in our business? The second thing that I think you need to understand is that we have to think systems first, tools second. It is so easy to get wooed by, should I be on ChatGPT or Claude? Should I use Monday.com or Asana or ClickUp or Trello, or even as simple as which template should I use for drafting my blog posts or my Instagram captions? But ultimately, these are tools questions. And the questions that we need to be asking are those system strategy questions. How should this system work? What is the goal of this system? What's a valuable input? What's a valuable output? Can, once we have aligned on the core items of that system, make the assessment of the correct tool? One thing I see a lot of small business owners make the mistake of is that they see people posting about this cool new feature that has launched in one tool, and then they end up spending their whole next week of work transitioning from their old tool to this new tool with this fancy new feature. But they have not really asked themselves, first of all, how applicable is that tool to their business, and how is this new tool that they're transitioning to that might have more bells and whistles, is it actually aligned with the way their brain works, the way they interact with these types of tools? And these are where there is not one objectively best tool. It always matters what is best for you. When I do system sprints with my clients, we are always digging into what is the actually goal that you are working towards in your content creation system, in your team management system. And then once we can get very clear on what this sort of scope is, think about it like a job description for your tool. Then we can go out and hire the right tool once we're very clear on the job description. But you have to think strategy first and then tool second. Because if you don't ask these strategy questions, then you're just building a bunch of processes and onboarding a bunch of tools to do the wrong thing. And the final piece that you have to think about when you start thinking about building systems for your business, and this is the one that a lot of people don't talk about, and I think it is especially important in this sort of like rapid AI transformation age that we all need to be thinking about as small business owners, is you can't let technology dilute your edge. If you are running a thriving business right now, there is something that made you work. Whether it's how you support your clients, the vibe of the photography you do that's unique to somebody else, or the way that you incorporate certain therapeutic practices into your therapy work, literally, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. There is probably something that made you essential, that made you unique. And when you start to have conversations about systems and especially implementing tools, technology, and automations, there is a real tendency to implement these things in a way that then eliminates your edge. Here's how I think about this when working with clients. If I am working with a floral designer who has this really lovely eccentric sense of style, and her clients come to her because of the relationship that she builds with her clients and the sort of just like fun eccentricity that informs her view on floral design, then when I'm thinking about her content creation process, we're going to be having conversations about where do her best, most sort of eccentric ideas come from, and how can I help surface those in her content creation system so that that essence of her continues to come out as she is doing the day in and day out of creating content. Or when I'm looking at her onboarding process, I'm going to ask what are some of the most special memories that she has of onboarding new clients, or what are the things that maybe are less efficient that she takes time to do that really makes a difference. And I'm either going to try to leave those completely alone and build a system around it that still gives them a space to thrive, or we're going to try to drill down to what are the most successful, what are the ones she loves most. If she has like a text message that she always sends, or a welcome gift that she onboards with people, but 70% of that is typically the same, we can probably have a conversation about ways to make that more efficient so that she still maintains everything that makes her unique, but it's built in a way that is more sustainable and more efficient for her as a business. When you're building systems, you have to make sure that you're systematizing everything in a way that maintains your edge so that you don't become one of the many businesses out there that is just going to sound like standardized AI slop and not too. So with those key things established, that productivity doesn't equal profitability, that you have to think systems first and tools second, and that you cannot let technology dilute your edge, let's have a real conversation about how to build systems in a way that actually helps you achieve your business goals. The first step of this process is one that most people way too quickly overlook, and it's because it kind of can feel theoretical. We have to understand the fundamentals of how business works. The good news about this is it can be pretty standard with some minor variations across businesses. Every business generally has to have some sort of marketing function. How do you get your business in front of potential clients? Every business has some sort of sales function. How do you take somebody who's an interested client and turn them into a signed paying client? Every business tends to have a finance function. That's like, where do the dollars go? How are they managed? What are our expenses? How are these things tracked? What timing do all these things function on? And every business tends to have an operations function. Operations is the most flexible of all of those because it's going to look very different if you're a social media agency than if you're a wedding planner, than if you're a therapist. And so those types of things can look like client onboarding processes, file management systems, note-taking systems. They can look like inventory management if you're a retail store. Once we have sort of a general sense of how things work, then we're going to start asking some very important questions about what are the most important in terms of making money, about maintaining your margin, and about the business thriving in the way that you want. This, again, varies for every business, but some common ones that I expect to see when I'm talking to a new client is client experience. So how do you make sure that the client enjoys the experience of working with you and that you reach your goals? Another common one is the sales process. So conversion from when somebody indicates they're interested, either with a lead form or an Instagram DM or filling out a quiz. How does the process then guide them towards becoming a paying client? Again, I can't answer in a big YouTube video what the most important section is for every business, but once we have a lay of the land, then we can begin identifying where are things broken and where do things need to be improved and what's working well that we like sort of shouldn't mess with at this point. It's important to note that at this stage, we're not talking about the tools. We're not talking about how your convert kit, or now it's called kit, your kit account takes somebody from being a lead that signed up to your newsletter to sell them to your product or service. We're talking about the sales process at that point, not literally the technology function of how kit does that. Once we've got the system on the board, then we need to identify the important revenue generating activities that you're either deprioritizing or you don't have time for. We also want to identify what are the activities that are important. They can't be cut from the list, but they're not the things that are most important, that involve a competitive advantage, or that honestly they're just the most draining and exhausting. With those two sections, those are going to be the ones that we want to focus on the most. But before we dive into how we build the systems to refine either spending more time on the most important things or less time on the least important things, we first have to refresh or define your competitive advantage. That's where the whole piece of making sure that technology doesn't eliminate your edge, yeah, it's important. So we're going to make sure that you are very clear on what is it that makes you special, and that's something that we're going to pay attention to the whole rest of the process of making sure we protect it. Now, normally at this stage of the process, there are more systems that they'd want to fix than there is absolutely time for, and then it becomes a prioritization game. Yes, I know you want to fix all the systems at once, but the thing with systems is that you're not going to be able to identify what's working and what's not, fix issues, and refine over time if you're changing too many things in your world at once. So we want to make sure that you build a ranked system of this is the most important, and then working your way down the list to improve systems over time. And then it's time to start building. That's where you get into the tactical nitty gritty. And this is the first time in all of these steps where we're actually talking about tools. At this stage, we can establish, okay, what tools are you currently using? What functionalities do you need or not need? What are the steps in the process where you get stuck? Where do you have blank page paralysis, where like having something to start from would really help you? And when I'm working with clients, I'm tending to look for pieces of information that I can give them in an easy to find place that are going to make things easier. Obviously, the automation and AI opportunities where they can get the support of something else to get something done more effectively. And then how are we going to evaluate whether something sort of hit our goals, achieved the right things that we want? And that can look very different if we're looking at how to automate a bookkeeping system versus standardizing a content creation process versus up-leveling your client onboarding process or managing team communications internally. But then the final piece of building a system that will actually lead to hitting your business goals is that it has to be iterative. I am a systems nerd, an automation and organization nerd, and I have never ever once built a system that works perfectly the first time. And that's why it's super important that you leave time and mental energy to refine the system when something initially breaks or doesn't quite work, and tweak as you go. Even more importantly, you want to include an iterative step in your system. So if it is a content creation system, then it's really important that at the end of any run of the content creation system, there's an opportunity for you to refine the system moving forward. Whether that's refining templates or adding new ideas, anything that you can do to make the system stronger over time. The key to making sure that a system actually helps you achieve your business goals is not having the right tool, it's not having a clear process map, and it's not a standard operating procedure. You need to be very clear on what are the most important revenue generating activities, what are the biggest time and mental drain sucks, what leads to you starting this activity, are you starting with the right information, and then at that strategy systems level thinking of what am I optimizing for, what am I building toward. Let's put something out on the table. All of that may have sounded a little vague. It's hard to give a holistic overview to how to build a system when the systems all vary so dramatically. And in my personal opinion, the thing that makes a system successful is that it's customized to how you work and what is distinct about your business. So I can't tell you step by step on how to build any individual system without knowing you. If you hear all that and you now have some questions about how do you actually transition this into practical changes in your systems, drop those questions down below and I would love to dive into them in another video. And if any of this insight was at all helpful to you, it would mean an enormous amount if you took the time to like and subscribe down below. We are a new channel, and literally there is nothing that YouTube cares about more than those like and subscribe data, and so it's the best thing that you can do to support. It would really mean the world to us. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.